I'm Alexis, and this is the Whatcha Watchin podcast. And today we are delving into one of the most beloved films of 1999, The Mummy, starring Brendan Fraser. And to do that, I am joined once again by one of my favorite guests. Billy from Geek of Oz is here. Billy, thank you so much for being on the pod again.
No worries. Happy to be here.
So, this is a movie that was kind of in development for a long time. There was a George Romero version, there was a Clive Barker version, there was a Joe Dante version, and then finally we got this version, the Stephen Sommers version with Brendan Fraser. Do you remember seeing this movie in theaters, or did you see it? Was this more of like a home video watch for you?
I definitely saw this at theaters. I remember specifically because I went with our family went with another family that my dad was friends with. So it was like take all the kids. They had I think 4 kids. So it was like take the 6 kids out to go to the movies. I was at local cinema, my favorite, which I ended up working at as well.
Nice.
And then afterwards we went to Pizza Hut for the works.
Perfect. Like that's basically the ideal kid evening out, really.
Yeah, and that was back in the day when I think Pizza Hut, because it was Pepsi, it's would get all the movie tie-ins.
Oh,
I think even tying into another 1999 film, Phantom Menace, there were so many tie-ins and stuff.
Sure.
So going to Pizza Hut would be yes, get the movie tie-in as well.
It's like the full cinematic experience must involve Pizza Hut back in the day.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like with this, I don't remember seeing it in theaters, but I remember seeing it so many times, on home video. And then I feel like they used to play this on TV, but it's one of those movies where I think I wonder if it's exposure to it that made people love it so much, where it's I feel like we saw it so often as kids that inevitably it just became this movie that everyone loves. It was there was very the Indiana Jones movies existed and those were very classics. But there really hadn't been a great sort of action adventure movie sort of since that period of time. And this just came in there and immediately filled that void. It's basically it feels like an Indiana Jones movie. Much more so than a Universal monster kind of movie, for sure.
100%. And I think between Indiana Jones and the Mummy, there was action adventure, but it was more the Rambo type, Predator type stuff.
Yeah, it was a little more action than adventure, and this gives a little more adventure than action. And it has there's a romance, there's whatever. In a way, it feels very, it's a reimagining of a 1932 film, and it feels very kind of classic Hollywood in the sense of giving you all those cinematic things that old-timey Hollywood would deliver. But in a way that's very for audiences of 99, and it's cool and it's fun and it's a little bit sexy and it's, got really cool CGI and special effects, which I feel at the time, I remember thinking the effects were so amazing at the time. And they're still pretty good when you consider how old they are.
Exactly. And it was pulpy as well, which is another great thing. I know there was a couple of films during that early, 90s period around this time, The Shadow, the Phantom, they weren't as successful as this.
Yeah, they were taking those kind of old-timey ideas of things that I remember my grandmother was oh, we all loved The Shadow, and taking these very old things and then turning them into kind of sleek cool things for the 90s, and that didn't always work, but then with this it just worked like gangbusters. It was fantastic. I think a huge part of it too is the cast. I mean, obviously Brendan Fraser, the key piece of this whole thing. Not only is he smoking hot, but he is so damn charming in this movie. Just undefeated.
But even most of the cast is hot as well.
Sure.
Oded Fair.
Yes.
Trying to remember the name of the actor playing Imhotep. I've forgotten his name. But then also
Arnold Vosloo.
Yeah, and then Rachel Weisz.
Of course.
Just it was what is it where they say it's not a genie in a bottle, but just
lightning in a bottle. Yeah, totally.
That's it, lightning in a bottle. Yeah, it was just amazing.
Yeah, for sure. It's like just a combination of like all the hottest people you can imagine from back in the day where you're like, wow, like so this is just a gorgeous collection of people. I put up something because I've noticed a lot of people on threads talking about this movie. And I think a
Yeah.
huge portion of them are people who were not born in 99. And so like who did not see
Yes.
this movie and sort of that initial run. Because I'm getting a lot of like, you guys, I've just discovered this kind of things on there.
Yeah.
And so all these people are putting up pictures of Oded Fair being like, okay, is this the hottest a man has ever been? And I just like, I blame him for the reason, like I look at, I have such a crush on Rana Dagubati, who is also like eyebrow king. And I'm like, maybe this was like in my subconscious where Oded Fair like made me love dudes with really great eyebrows.
Oh yeah, like you could see Oded Fair being in a Bollywood film. Like
Totally. It's like a
he
similar
would
vibe for
be in
sure.
the YSFR spy
Yeah.
universe.
Totally. For sure. He could be like a villain in something where you're like, the villains in those movies are always like really hot. They're always like a dude where you're like, look, the hero is great, but this villain is like a smoking hot dude. And I feel like
Yes.
he could be like a villain in one of those movies. He brings that level of hotness to the table for sure.
The whole lightning in a bottle thing, it's like, I mean, the fact that this is also one of the famous 1999 films, which, that
Yes.
year is just full of amazing films.
Such a huge variety of films that year too. I feel like now when we have, a year of really good movies or movies that like there's I feel like now there's a divide between a year of really good movies can mean really critically acclaimed like Oscar quality movies, or it can mean a year of huge blockbusters that make a ton of money. But those things are not often the same thing anymore. Whereas in 99, I feel like you have this thing of movies that are both making money and also being really critically acclaimed and great films.
Yes, yes. I feel also like maybe we get these days like a lot of the stuff that is critically acclaimed. I don't know. I feel like lately we don't get a wide variety of genres per year. Like,
Totally.
there seems to be a lot of sci-fi one year, a lot of war that is critically acclaimed. Whereas, like, I feel like the 1999 and around that year, there seemed to be a wide variety of genres that are like
Yeah.
critically acclaimed.
It was kind of like the peak of movies in a sense where it was
Yeah,
like just movies in general. It was like, you could have a horror movie, you could have an action movie, you could have a drama, you could have a suspense movie, you could have all these different things just coexisting and audiences would go to all of it. It's very indicative of like a time before streaming. And yes, there was home video, but it wasn't the same. And you had to wait like a year before a movie was available on video versus now where you can just, I'm not going to see that in theaters because next week it'll be available to me on streaming.
I think Netflix was actually around then, but it was the whole like they send you a DVD in the mail. I feel like also like I have seen, like, not to talk about Netflix, but I feel like I've seen like um op shops and like secondhand stores, the whole like, wait, oh, here's a copy of the Mummy, and it's like the Netflix CD, the
Totally.
Netflix DVD that's been
Yeah,
sent out.
totally. Those Netflix DVDs are their own little collector's items.
Yes.
You had the box set of this DVD, right?
Yes, so I had a box set, and it was like a full on like a box, and it was the Mummy and the Mummy 2. And I think I still have it somewhere. My stuff it's all
That's
packed
great.
away, and I don't want to, like, it's either gonna fall on me or I'll
Yeah,
have an allergic reaction from the dust. But like
totally.
it came like, so on the front of it had like the Mummy Ultimate Edition and then the Mummy 2, and it had lots of features and everything, and then it also came with a film reel, like just like one
That's so
tiny
cool.
scene. I think
Just
it
get a
might have
little
been
frame.
when yeah, I think it might have been when Anak Cinnamon and I guess Rachel Wise, who ends up being Rachel Wise's character, like were dueling.
Oh, nice. I miss the kind of like box art and all the interesting things that we used to get from DVDs because I feel like this is a great one. You can have sort of the Book of the Dead. There's so many like there's so many ways you could make really cool box sets with these. And then it's funny too because with a box set, inevitably for this, it's like, well, there are multiple movies in this franchise. We really just want the first one.
Yes. Look, I'm a sucker for the sequel. I like The Mummy Returns. Having rewatched it, it's definitely not as good as The Mummy. It's definitely more on the comedy side of things, um, like action comedy. But I do enjoy it, and I like that it sticks to, I guess, what it wants to do. But yeah, the Dragon Emperor, just
Yeah. It's
we've
funny
discussed.
with yeah,
I
The Mummy
couldn't even
Returns,
finish
like,
it.
oh, same. It's a tough one to get through for sure.
Yeah,
The Mummy Returns is interesting because like it you can kind of feel them sort of having to shoehorn The Rock into that movie. It's like it's a movie that completely exists. There's a plot, there's all these other things, and then they begin with this prologue about him, and then they're by the end of the movie they're like, "Oh shit, we got to put The Rock in this. We put him in the beginning." Okay. Like you could completely remove him from that movie and there would be zero consequences whatsoever to it.
I even just realized, like, so obviously the sequel is set like a couple of years later, like The Mummy Returns. They had slow mo in it, so it's like clearly like, oh, The Matrix did bullet time. Let's do
Oh,
bullet time.
totally. Yeah, you can feel the like response to other movies in that movie so much, which I think is part
Yeah.
of why it's disappointing. The first movie feels like it's really doing its own thing. Like it's
Mm.
inspired by Indiana Jones, obviously. It's inspired by those like old Hollywood movies, and Brendan Fraser's like an Errol Flynn type of character. But then the second movie really feels like they said like, okay, this needs to be like a ride. We need to have like an annoying kid. We need to have The Rock. We need to have these different things. You can sort of just feel that kind of checklist of what they need to have in it, in response to other big movies.
Yeah, that's definitely, you hit the nail on the head. It feels like a ride, like something you would go to Universal to. The Mummy, the ride, essentially, because there was multiple things, like the whole like flashing forward to different locations on the treasure hunt.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think the Indiana Jones movies suffer from that a little bit too, where you start to feel the kind of like ridification of the movie.
Mm.
But those movies are like so like high quality in terms of like performances and the effects and all the things. It's less of a drastic diminishing of returns there.
Yeah, it's very much like, so you know how you see sometimes images of like, oh, here, this is like Justice League um action figures, and they're not. They're like
Yeah. They're like the kind of
really bad.
knockoff. It's like this is the
Yeah.
mummy, but it isn't.
And I think that was around the time that Jet Li was like becoming big in America. And I think maybe Michelle Yao was getting big around then, or
Yeah.
not.
Michelle Yeoh, that movie is like such a criminal underutilization of her. I was like,
Oh
I was
yeah,
watching it and I kept thinking, like, man, this is not very good. And then when she was on screen, I was like, oh, there's hope. This might be okay. And then it was like, no, she's gone. She's not in it
yeah,
anymore. And I just kept thinking, like, could the whole movie just be about her? Because I actually would have really liked
oh yeah,
that. You know?
yeah. That would be great. Well, that's the thing. They were also trying to link it. From what I read, they were trying to link it to the first two films by saying that like Michelle Yao's character travels to Egypt and makes a copy of the Book of the Dead. But then they were like, yeah, that's too convoluted. We're not going to do that.
Too convoluted for this
Yeah, I know.
movie. Like,
Yeah, I know.
and of course, also like what's interesting about this too. So there's the casting choices in that third movie are so bizarre in the sense where like you have Brendan Fraser, he's great, he's back, that's what you need. You don't have Rachel Weisz, and I think like not having her in there, it just does such a disservice to the whole thing because the chemistry is one of the best parts of this franchise. I mean, really at this point it's like two
Yeah,
movies. But she like what she brings to the table is not really like repeatable by someone else, and boy we really
yeah,
find that out in that third movie.
yeah. Like I love Maria Bello, but like,
But not
yeah,
in
she
this.
definitely no, definitely not in this. Not in this. It was almost
Yeah,
like, I think I mentioned this to you. Um, she was giving like Downton Abbey vibes, but it was like, but it's almost like the character made progress. Like, well, not progress, like grew from the first film, from all that
totally.
hoity-toity stuff to the second film. So yeah, it was very strange. And then the kid was played by an Aussie actor, and it was like I thought he might have been because like, okay, the accent's off, like it
Yeah.
comes across a little like, and then yeah, it was confirmed when I looked it up on Wiki. Yeah, it's definitely an Aussie trying to do an American accent, and it's just
Yeah,
not
I
landing
watched it and
well.
I was kind of like, it's so weird because again, it feels like Shia LaBeouf and Indiana Jones is like kind of what they're going for. But then at
Yeah.
the same time, I was like, this doesn't work at all. And I feel like this dude and Brendan Fraser look like they're maybe like 5 years apart from each other. I know they aren't, but
Yes.
like they
Yeah.
look like they are. So when he's like, ah, this is my son who you just saw as this plucky British boy in this movie, and now he's just this like dude, you're like,
With a
who is
Boston
this?
accent.
Yeah, it's like there's no part of that seems like it has any continuity to what we've seen before, and it just doesn't make any sense. It feels so weird, and I just kept laughing because every time he came on screen and he was like, "My son," I was like, "My son, who is 5 years younger than me, my son, who is also a grown man for some reason." Like
Yes.
I couldn't get past it, and I think it just is one more thing that just makes that movie a bizarre experience because
Hmm.
you have so many sort of things that are from the first one, and it's just diluted in such a way that it feels like this weird imitation, like you know when they make like a Super Bowl commercial that's based on a movie and it's like, yeah, it's like the movie, but you could tell it's like a Super Bowl commercial. The sets are not very good or whatever. The costumes, it's like it's a commercial. This felt like that. This felt like the Super Bowl commercial version of like, oh, that first movie, or like how the MTV Movie Awards used to do sort of sketches that were like it's based on this, but here's, Janine Garofalo in it or something. This felt like that in a really bizarre way where it's just so removed from that original like fun.
Yeah, look, I would take the Gladiator Pepsi ad starring, I think it was Beyonce, Britney, and all that
The full
over,
pop star gladiator Pepsi commercial.
yeah, yeah, over Dragon Emperor. I would take
For
that
sure.
over this. I mean, look, I do like that John Hannah came across for the third film, playing the dumb brother, but and like, I mean, he kept the comedy for the third film, which is great. But even that, I think, couldn't save it.
Yeah, it's like you can just see it's like they're too far removed from it. It's too far down the line, we're too far gone. And I think movies themselves had changed by that point to where
Oh yeah,
this idea you couldn't really do. I think like the next thing that was kind of in the vein of this in terms of sort of action adventure things was maybe like National Treasure, was kind of like that had
yes,
kind of that fun Indiana Jones kind of vibe that the first movie had. And then again, they you got to make a million sequels and you got to keep going with it even though you don't really need to.
yeah.
So I think National Treasure was probably like more of a sequel to this in a sense of giving that same kind of feeling than any of the actual Mummy sequels.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And you hit the nail on the head as well with the sequel for National Treasure, which was like, yeah, no, that's not good. Like, I would take The Mummy Returns over the National
Yeah.
Treasure sequel.
Well, it's just again, it's like it's so funny because it really is the lightning in a bottle thing. You make this
Yeah,
really fun movie that everybody likes, and then you go, well, now we have to make another one, and it's like you're just never going to be able to capture the fun of that same experience. Pirates of the Caribbean kind of did the same thing. I think the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie totally fun,
oh
really an
yeah,
enjoyable movie, and then it's like, what are there like five of those movies or something at this point?
I've
And it's
lost
like
count.
it's too much. We've done too much. We've gone too far with this. You
Mm.
can't recapture that no matter what you try
No.
to do you have a favorite like scene or moment from that first movie that always stands out to you or that you think of when somebody says the mummy that always pops in your brain?
I think that couple of scenes, like when Brendan Fraser is post being taken out of the um, like post breaking out of jail and like going on the treasure hunt, just the whole like the continuous flirting with Rachel Weisz's character, and it's like the romance blossoming. I was like, I love that, but then also as soon as like Imhotep and awakens and the body horror, it's just like that body horror scene where like he's taken the guy's eyes. I'm like, Jesus
Yes.
Christ, it's intense. One scene that also comes to mind is when like the I think it's the seven plagues or something that gets happen, where everyone's like kind of a zombie,
Yeah,
and
that's great.
And Jonathan, like the character Jonathan, is like going to get the car, and he just pretends to be a zombie. I'm like,
He sneaks
that
by.
just I
So
crack
good.
up every time.
I love that as like a method too. Like anytime there's a zombie movie and someone's like, all we have to do is just be like, and like pretend to be zombies. I'm like, that's great. Yeah, I always think about, for me, I mean, the looks like you're on the wrong side of the river. Like that's such a good delivery of that.
Yes, 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 yes.
Always love that. Yeah. So fantastic.
Yeah,
And then I also think
poor
about
Benny.
too. Oh, I know, right? Betty, what a fun character. When you need those like sniveling little weaselly guy characters, he's like the perfect version of that. And I feel like every sniveling little weasel guy character that's come after that is like an imitation of that or like a version
Yeah.
of that. Cause he's perfect as that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are some really like solid side characters in here, and it's never more than you need. There are side characters that are memorable, but without like taking the focus away from the main sort of stars of this, for sure. What did you think of the Tom Cruise version of the Mummy?
Oof, jeez.
That was
What was
rough.
it? The Dark
The
Universe?
Dark Universe, the famed failed Dark Universe.
I mean, look, I would probably take it over the Dragon Emperor.
It's true.
I mean, barely, but yeah.
Well, overall, I think we would say, like, The Mummy 99, a classic, something that everybody loves. You could probably just skip the sequel. So for all the people who were born after 99 who are now discovering this movie and going on social media to talk about how they have discovered how everyone's hot in this movie, just appreciate this movie. I think you can probably go ahead and skip the follow-ups to this.
Oh yeah, I've had so many friends, like young queer people, be like, "My queer awakening is the Mummy."
For real. It's like the movie where the memes are always like, the bisexual smorgasbord of this movie of like everyone being just so gorgeous.
Yeah, I saw a meme where it was like, like watching the Mummy. It's like Brenda Fraser switching sides, Rachel Weisz switching sides, and it's like amazing.
So I would say we both think this movie is great. We both, love it. If you have a favorite scene of this movie, tell me in the comments in this video, because I am curious of what your favorite scene is. I feel like the you're on the wrong side of the river always stands out for me, but there are so many memorable moments in this movie, and I would love to hear what yours are.
Also, where you watched it.
Yeah, totally. Tell us if you watched this, on video for the first time, or if this was a theater watch for you. Did you have the sort of sexual awakening in the theater that so many people of this generation had? Billy, will you tell people where can they find you online and follow you and get all your content?
Okay, so online I am Aqualec, so Aqualec. You can find me everywhere, or Geek of Oz.
Love it. And definitely check Billy out. Follow him on all those places. You can follow me at Trashwire on Instagram, TikTok, Letterboxd, all the different things. You can also find me at Alexis Gentry on Instagram. And we will, if you liked this video, leave a like, leave a comment, tell us your favorite scene. Also, if you're listening to this, leave a review on iTunes or your podcast catcher of choice and let us know your favorite scene there. And thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.